Hey guys, good to see you again. This is our lesson on Act 4, Scene 1. Remember in our last scene we had Juliet say goodbye to Romeo. Her parents came in with happy news about her marrying Paris. She said she didn't want to. Lord Capulet went off on her and stormed out of the room. Turned to her mom. She asked her mom for help. Her mom said, I'm going to have nothing to do with you. You're on your own. And then she turned to the nurse, and the nurse said, we should just give up and you should just marry Paris. Remember that all three of them probably betrayed her in this sense. A person should be able to rely on their parents. That's kind of a foundational belief that our parents look out for us. Also, the nurse, because she had been with Juliet since birth. She was like a mother to her, and probably most importantly, she was the only one of the three that knew that Romeo and Juliet were married, so she made a huge mistake. So where that leads us today, guys, is that the nurse has no one else to turn to. Remember, Romeo's already said goodbye and gone off to Mantua, so Juliet's going to Friar Lawrence. So again, this is in Act 4, Scene 1, and hopefully you guys always read it through before you watch my video. So we start Act 4, Scene 1 with Friar Lawrence very awkwardly trying to talk to Paris, because Paris comes in and tries to set up the wedding. Well, obviously Friar Lawrence is concerned. He is a pastor. Just like Juliet feels like it's a sin if she were to marry two different people at the same time. Friar Lawrence, of course, would be responsible, and he would consider that a pretty big sin as well, to marry the same girl to two different men under God as their witness, etc. So Friar Lawrence is trying to make excuses and trying to postpone things, telling Paris things like, on Thursday, sir, the time's very short, and I am very concerned about this. I don't like the course because it seems uneven, and you say you don't even know how she feels, because remember, Juliet and Paris haven't even spoken to each other, and awkwardly it's going to be here in just a minute. Paris says, you know what, it's all good. We should still go through with this because everybody's so concerned about Juliet being upset. Well, we know that it's not over Tybalt's death. We know that she's upset over Romeo's loss. So remember how we talked about people who don't know what's going on are going to make incorrect assumptions. And Paris does that here, making kind of an excuse. But we knew that he wanted to marry her pretty bad since the beginning. Juliet then chooses that moment to come in, and just like she talked to her mother, kind of using double meanings without being dishonest, she does the same to Paris as well. Paris addresses her pretty arrogantly, saying, happily met my lady and my wife, and she's like, well, you shouldn't really be saying that till I actually am your wife. Paris says, well, but that's going to happen in a couple days. She says, well, whatever has to be, I guess. Paris says, when you go confess to Friar Lawrence, confess to him that you love me. And she switches that around and she says, I will confess to you that I love him. Paris is kind of clueless in this, and he kind of doesn't get what's going on. But she then responds to Paris, who's trying to get Juliet to declare her love for him, which is all sorts of weird because they just met, literally. And she says, well, it would be better if I said good things about you behind your back because those hold more value. Finally, Friar Lawrence kind of interrupts because he sees what's going on, and he asked Juliet to come speak to him, and Paris says, well, heaven forbid I interrupt or stop somebody from confessing or giving devotion to their pastor. So Paris leaves. that's when it gets real. Because Juliet's like, oh, shut the door, and when thou hast done so, come weep with me past hope, past cure, past help. And Friar Lawrence says, I know what's going on. I know on Thursday they're going to try to marry you to Paris. And Juliet says, yeah, don't tell me you know about it unless you have a plan. Remember, he had the last plan, that plan about Romeo going off to Mantua, lying low, etc., and then the happily ever after. Juliet actually takes out a knife and says, if you don't have a plan for me, then twixt my extremes and me this bloody knife shall pay the umpire. So she says, be not long to speak, I long to die. If what thou speakest, speak not of remedy. If you don't have a way out of this, then it's done right here, right now. And Friar Lawrence says, wait a minute, I have a plan. If you are so desperate that you would kill yourself over this rather than marry Paris, then I think you're strong enough to go with this plan I've come up with. Juliet then just kind of expounds on that by saying, I don't care what it is, no matter how scary, no matter how dangerous, no matter how horrible. I'd rather jump off a tower. I'd rather be chained with bears or snakes. I'd rather be put in a charnel house, which is kind of like a morgue where they keep dead bodies. I would rather be laid into a grave. It's kind of ironic that she's saying this because we know what the plan is. This whole plan is involving her faking her death. So she is going to go into a grave, is going to go into that charnel house. But Juliet says, whatever it is, no matter how horrifying, I'll do it. So here comes the plan. So make sure you guys get this down. So first step. Friar tells Juliet, you need to go home and you need to act like everything's okay, that you've come to your senses, and that you're going to agree to marry Paris. What I want you to do then, on Wednesday night, remember they're supposed to be married on Thursday, on Wednesday night, I want you to make sure you're by yourself, specifically that the nurse is not there. Why? Because the nurse can't see Juliet drink this potion, obviously, and that's probably kind of a normal thing for the nurse to be there. It's hard for us to understand because we don't live in that type of society, guys, but the very wealthy, in this time especially, if you are a servant or a person attending, then you might have the responsibility of sitting in a chair next to the person's bed that you served in anticipation that they might wake up in the night and want a drink of water or an extra blanket or whatever. So it was probably very normal that the nurse would be in Juliet's room. She would help her to bed, and she'd probably sit in the chair next to her. So Friar Lawrence says, go home and act like you're going to marry Paris, and then get rid of the nurse. Make sure you're all by yourself. Now, that's not going to be too hard because remember how she feels about the nurse because of that last scene. Then when you're by yourself, you're going to take this vial. And he hands her this vial. A vial is like a little bottle. This is hand sanitizer. But he says, take thou this vial, and being then in bed, this distilling liquor drink thou off. So lay down on the bed, open this, and drink it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to turn pale. You're going to turn cold. Your pulse is going to disappear entirely, and there's not in any way anybody can feel your breath. Now, what's different about that, guys, is in 2020, medical professionals, even if you look like you're dead, they can still detect a heartbeat. They can still detect a pulse, no matter how faint. But in this time period, it was all by touch. So they'd put like a mirror in front of somebody's mouth. If it didn't fog up, they were probably dead. They could feel like for a pulse, they would just feel the skin, how somebody looked. If they looked pale or their lips started turning blue, then that was a sign that they were dead. Now, unfortunately, what that meant is oftentimes people were buried alive. There are all these horror stories about when they have to move a cemetery or there's a natural disaster and graves are disturbed. They actually see that people have been buried alive. How do they know that? Because there's scratch marks on the insides of the coffins. Now, luckily that wouldn't happen to us in 2020 because we go through this embalming process and obviously they would make sure we were dead. But in Juliet's time, it's all about how somebody looks. It's all about how somebody feels. It's all about seeing if you can detect anything. So this potion that Juliet's drinking is going to make her look dead. And especially focus on the part where it says that it's going to turn her very pale, because that's going to come up later. And she's going to be in this state for 42 hours. So says the friar. Now, what's a little sketchy about that is if you've ever taken any kind of meds, cold medicine, allergy medicine, whatever, medicines are not an alarm clock. They don't work at a certain point and then just stop working at the exact minute. When they have something on the box that says it's 12-hour allergy meds, you might be good with 12 hours. You might be more like 10 or 14, but it's not an alarm clock. It's not going to go off at a specific time. So, but as far as Friar Lawrence says, it's supposed to be like about 42 hours. Now, when she wakes up, he says it will be like you've just had a really good night's sleep. And what's going to happen in the meantime is when she appears dead, her family, of course, will decide to have a funeral for her. Now, the other part of this plan that helps it work in this circumstance is especially rich people in Verona, in a number of parts of the world, and in some parts of the United States even, do not bury their dead below ground. They put them like in a crypt. Think of like, I always think of like horror movies or vampire movies when you're in a graveyard and there's like this stone structure. They often call it a sepulcher as well, or a crypt or a mausoleum. It's like a stone building, and inside that building, they have like these shelves and these platforms where they put the bodies on and just cover them with sheets. And what will happen here is when Juliet's family finds her dead, they will have the funeral, they will put her in the family tomb, family crypt. What the friar will be doing is he will be communicating with Romeo and telling Romeo, you need to get back here because this plan is in motion. When Juliet wakes up in that 42 hours, Romeo's supposed to be there, Pastor's supposed to be there, and then they'll be able to sneak off and live happily ever after in Mantua. Now, the other thing that always comes up, guys, is people often say, well, that's stupid. Why wouldn't Juliet just run away and have her happily ever after? Well, think about this, guys. Hopefully you're getting a clue about how maniacal, how egotistical, what a power freak, control freak the Lord Capulet is. And he would probably track her down. First of all, he has the means, he has the money, he has the desire. How dare his daughter run away from him? He could very easily hire people to track her down and bring her back. I don't know if you've seen movies like that. There are a whole bunch, and especially during this time period. So Lord Capulet is this type of person. He would so track her down and bring her back kicking and screaming. How can she get out of this? Fake her death. If people think she's dead, they're not going to be looking for her. So this is the best way they're feeling that they can get the Capulets off their back and they can still have their happily ever after. So, you've probably seen a bunch of movies like that too, where people fake their deaths and to try to get somebody off the trail. So that's kind of what they're doing here. Juliet says, give me that potion, I'm going to do it. They say goodbye, and then Juliet goes back home. So the main things you want to get out of this today, guys, is the plan itself, all of the intricate parts of the plan. Please know that the more complex a plan is, the more difficult it might be, and the more things that there are that can go wrong. I kind of equate it with cars. Cars used to be very simple. Every male on the planet could repair his own car. Nowadays, they're very digital, they're very electronic, they're very computerized. Good luck having the average person repair their own car. That's the way this plan is. This plan is so complex that so many things can go wrong. And just like with our cars nowadays, so many things can go wrong with the computers and etc. So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to be careful with your prompt in answering your check for understanding. And also, I'm looking forward to your flip grid on Thursday dealing with the love at first sight text. This is a little bit late in the game, but hopefully you're understanding the depth of their love if Juliet's going to fake her death to be with this guy. At least Romeo and Juliet think it's real. So this text is going to talk to you about different opinions about this whole love at first sight thing. It is actually going to reference Romeo and Juliet, and then you're going to respond to the prompt that will be on Flipgrid. So, hope you guys have a good day. Hope you're doing okay with this quarantine thing, and I will talk to you soon. So in the meantime, you are blessed to be a blessing, and adios, hasta pronto.